You never realize what you have until it's gone. That's what everyone says, right? It's a cliché printed on coffee mugs and stitched into throw pillows. A hollow little phrase you nod at, but never really feel. Not until you're sitting in the wreckage, breathing in the dust of a life you demolished with your own two hands. My name is Genevieve. I'm 33. And my life imploded because of one stupid, drunken conversation my husband was never supposed to hear. Now, I'm here. In this cramped one-bedroom apartment that always smells faintly of stale curry from the neighbors downstairs. The mail on my counter isn't friendly letters. It's a stack of pale pink and angry red notices, each one a paper-thin monument to my failure. I look around this little box, so different from the airy townhouse with its manicured lawn, and I ask myself the same question, over and over. A question that echoes in the dead of night. How did everything go so wrong? So fast. It started, as most tragedies do, not with a bang, but with a quiet, creeping dissatisfaction. A slow poison I willingly drank every single day. Elias and I were together for 7 years. When we first met, he wasn't the man of my dreams. Not the dashing entrepreneur or the sharp-witted doctor my college friends were still holding out for. He was the reliable option. The safe harbor I steered into when I was exhausted from dating charming losers who treated their jobs like a temporary hobby. He worked as an HVAC specialist back then. Not glamorous, I know. He came home with grease under his fingernails and a tiredness in his bones that spoke of honest hard work. My job in a medical billing office paid okay. Nothing spectacular. But between the two of us, we made it work. We managed to get that townhouse in a decent neighborhood, the kind where you weren't embarrassed to have people over for a barbecue. In the beginning, things were fine. That was the word for our life. Fine. Elias was attentive. He'd fix the leaky faucet without me asking. He'd remember I liked the corner brownie piece. He'd listen to my endless complaints about my boss. My sister Clara would always tell me how lucky I was. "You found a good one, Genna," she'd say. I'd just smile and nod. But deep down, in a place I never spoke of, I felt a constant, low hum of disappointment. A voice that whispered, "You could have done better. You settled." Everything shifted last year. Elias got the promotion. He was moved into a management position. Suddenly, he was making significantly more money. This should have been a great thing. A reason to celebrate. And it was, for about a week. Except, with the new title and the bigger paycheck came this new, responsible attitude about our finances. An attitude that drove me absolutely insane. He started questioning every purchase on our joint account. He downloaded a budgeting app. He wanted to have weekly meetings about our financial goals. "Jenna," he'd say, holding up a receipt, "do you really need another pair of shoes? We're trying to save for a down payment on a real house, remember?" What he didn't understand, or what I told myself he didn't understand, was that I worked hard for my money, too. Sure, his salary now covered the mortgage, the car payments, and most of the utilities. But I paid for all the groceries, my car insurance, my personal bills. The way I saw it, any money left over from my paycheck was mine. Mine to spend however I wanted. But Elias didn't see it that way. In his new, responsible world, every spare dollar was our dollar, and it should go directly into our savings. I started to feel suffocated, trapped. So I did something. I opened a separate account. He didn't know about it. Nothing shady, I told myself. It was just a little place to transfer $100 from each paycheck. A little fund so I could buy things without getting the third degree. An escape fund. I told myself he was being controlling, that the extra income had gone to his head, giving him a sense of power over me. I conveniently ignored the fact that he was just being responsible. He was planning for a future I was actively trying to sabotage. That's how things were when Lorelei started at the office. And that's when everything really started to unravel. Lorelei was everything I wasn't. Recently divorced, carefree, and living her best life, if her perfectly curated Instagram was anything to go by. Unlike my other friends, who constantly praised Elias, Lorelei actually listened when I vented. She leaned in, her eyes wide with sympathy, and validated every single one of my toxic thoughts. Men like that are so typical, she said during our first happy hour, swirling the olive in her martini. They get a little taste of power and suddenly think they own you. My ex was the exact same way. Finally, someone who understood. We became inseparable. Lunch partners. Venti gossip session companions. And with every conversation, my version of Elias transformed. He warped from the caring, hardworking man he actually was into this controlling, boring tyrant who was supposedly making my life a living hell. Last night, I told her over margaritas one Friday. He asked why there was a $200 withdrawal from our joint account. Like I'm some child who needs to report every purchase. No. I conveniently left out the part where that $200 had gone straight into my secret account, which now held nearly $3,000. That's financial abuse, Genna, Lorelei declared dramatically, her hand on her heart. He's trying to control you through money. I nodded eagerly, soaking it in. Loving how she painted me as a victim, a brave woman struggling under the thumb of an oppressive man. Meanwhile, Elias kept trying. He'd suggest weekend trips to the mountains, movie nights on the couch with our favorite takeout. I'd find excuses for everything. Then, I'd complain to Lorelei about how boring his ideas were. When he brought up starting a family, I shut down completely. We can't afford kids right now, I snapped one evening. It was a blatant lie. His careful financial planning had actually put us in a perfect position. But we've been saving, he said, confusion clouding his gentle features. That's literally what we've been working toward. Your finances, maybe? I muttered, thinking of my secret account. A fund earmarked not for diapers and daycare, but for a solo trip to Italy. Work became my escape, my sanctuary. One evening, I was working late and found myself alone with Julian from accounting. He was tall, single, with that confident smirk that always made me a little nervous in a good way. Your husband doesn't mind you working so late? He asked, leaning against my desk. Elias doesn't control my schedule, I replied sharply, enjoying the way Julian raised his eyebrows, impressed. When I got home that night, long after dark, Elias had waited up. There was a plate of dinner for me, carefully covered in the microwave. A small, thoughtful gesture. Instead of gratitude, I felt a bubble of pure annoyance. It felt like a trap. Like his kindness was just another way to make me feel obligated to him. Another chain. By the time Elias suggested hosting a backyard barbecue for Memorial Day weekend, I was living in a completely different reality than he was. We weren't just on different pages, we were reading entirely different books. I spent the week leading up to the party complaining to Lorelei about how Elias was forcing me to host his work friends. The truth? He had asked if I was okay with the idea first, and I'd absently agreed while scrolling through my phone. I took Lorelei's advice to heart. Show him you won't be controlled, she'd said. So, I drove to the fancy wine shop and picked up several bottles of expensive Cabernet, charging it all to our joint account. When Elias raised an eyebrow at the receipt, I launched into a teary, pre-rehearsed tirade about how he wanted to have people over but didn't want to pay for proper entertaining. He sighed, defeated, and dropped the subject. I felt a sick sense of victory. The party started at 3 o'clock. Neighbors and Elias's co-workers filtered into our backyard. I plastered on my perfect wife smile, fetching drinks and laughing at jokes I didn't find funny, all while secretly counting down the minutes until everyone would leave. Elias was in his element. He was a natural host, grilling burgers, telling stories, making everyone feel welcome. Every now and then, he'd glance my way, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Like maybe this gathering of friends in our shared home, would somehow bring us closer together again. Poor naive Elias. Lorelei arrived fashionably late, of course, making a grand entrance in a sundress that turned every head in the yard. 2 glasses of wine in, I was already feeling more relaxed. My laughs were a little too loud. My stories a little too animated. I was performing. As the afternoon wore on, the sun dipping lower in the sky, Elias came over to the little group I'd formed with Lorelai and Julian. "Hey," he said quietly, just to me. "I have that early meeting tomorrow. Maybe we should start wrapping things up around 8?" I looked at him, then at my audience. "God, we just got started," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. Always so controlling. I saw the hurt flash in his eyes before he could mask it. He just gave a tight nod and walked away. By 7 o'clock, I was on my 4th glass of wine and feeling no pain. Elias had retreated into quiet host mode, cleaning up paper plates and making sure the cooler stayed full. Lorelai, Julian, and I had moved to the patio furniture with another one of Julian's friends, Mike. The conversation had turned to relationships. "My ex never understood the concept of personal space," Mike was saying. "Always had to know where I was, who I was with." "No. I saw my opening. Elias is just like that," I chimed in, the lie sliding out as smoothly as the wine went down. It was completely untrue. Elias trusted me implicitly. So suffocating sometimes. Julian laughed. "You seem like the independent type, the kind who wouldn't put up with that for long." Something about the way he said it, the way he was looking at me, made me sit up straighter. I tossed my hair back. "You have no idea." So what keeps you around?" he asked, leaning forward just slightly. "The wine? The warm evening air? The flattering attention from a handsome man? The weeks and months of building this false narrative about my marriage? It all culminated in that single, terrible moment. I didn't know Elias had come back out to the patio to collect empty glasses. I didn't know he was standing just inside, behind the sliding glass door, which was open just a crack. Honestly, I lowered my voice, making it conspiratorial and seductive. "I'd totally cheat if I knew I'd never get caught." Lorelai giggled nervously. Julian's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Mike suddenly looked very uncomfortable and stared down at his drink. But I was on a roll now. The words were spilling out, unfiltered, poisonous. "Elias has been so controlling lately. He doesn't even deserve loyalty. He thinks because he pays most of the bills, he gets to dictate everything." I gestured dismissively with my wine glass. "Meanwhile, I'm just biding my time, building my escape fund." I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. 7 years with Mr. Reliable. I've definitely put in my time. That's when I noticed it. Everyone's eyes. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were shifting to something behind me. I turned, expecting to see a neighbor joining our little group. Instead, there was Elias. He was frozen in the doorway, a stack of used paper plates in his hands, and an expression on his face I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hurt. It was clarity. A sudden, devastating, soul-crushing clarity. Our eyes met for a brief, excruciating moment. An eternity. Then, without a single word, he calmly set down the plates on a side table, turned around, and walked back into the house. The silence he left behind was deafening. I should have gone after him. Immediately, I should have explained it was the wine talking, that I was just being stupid, that I didn't mean any of it. But some stubborn, awful, prideful part of me just sat there. I thought, let him stew in it for a bit. That's what he gets for trying to end my fun early. By the time I finally went inside, hours later, Elias was nowhere to be found. The kitchen was spotless. He'd cleaned everything up by himself. The door to our bedroom was closed. I fell asleep on the couch, still in my party dress, convinced we'd have a fight in the morning, make up, and this would all just become another story I'd tell Lorelai about Elias being too sensitive. I had no idea. I had no idea I had just detonated my entire life. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and the sour taste of cheap wine in my mouth. The house was unnervingly quiet. No sound of the coffee maker brewing. No shower running. I checked my phone. 10:37 del mattino. Elias's car was gone from the driveway. I tried calling his cell. Straight to voicemail. By evening, with still no word from him, I was vacillating between genuine worry and simmering indignation. How dare he just disappear like that? I texted Lorelai. Elias disappeared after the party, being dramatic as usual. She sent back a wide-eyed emoji. Maybe he's really upset about what you said? Please, I replied, scoffing. It's not like I actually cheated. It was just talk. On Monday morning, I got ready for work as usual, half expecting to find Elias asleep in the guest room, having come home late. The house remained empty. Silent. By lunchtime, with still no contact, a tiny seed of real, cold worry had begun to grow in my stomach. This wasn't like him. That evening, I came home to find his car back in the driveway. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it almost buckled my knees. It was followed immediately by a surge of irritation. I'd spent all day worrying, and he couldn't even be bothered to send a single text. I walked inside, ready for a fight. But the living room looked different. The large, framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Hawaii, the one that had hung over the fireplace for 6 years, was gone. All that was left was a bare nail in the wall. The stack of books he always kept on the coffee table was missing. His laptop wasn't in its usual spot on the side desk. Elias? I called out, dropping my purse on the counter. Where have you been? I was worried sick. He emerged from the hallway. He was carrying a duffel bag. His face was a mask of calm I didn't recognize. There was no anger, no tears, none of the raw emotion I had expected, had been preparing for. There was just nothing. A complete absence. I needed some time to think, he said. His voice was steady, level, in a way that sent a chill down my spine, and to get some things in order. What things? Why are you packing a bag? Don't you think you're overreacting a little? It was just some stupid drunk talk, Elias. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like he was seeing a stranger. It wasn't just drunk talk, Jenna. It was the truth. He paused, and his next words landed like stones. Actually, it was confirmation. Confirmation of what I've suspected for a while now. He handed me a manila folder. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out. My name, his name, a clinical, black and white description of assets to be divided. The room seemed to tilt sideways. This is insane, I managed to choke out, my voice shrill. You're filing for divorce because of one stupid comment at a party? No, Genna. His voice remained terrifyingly calm. I'm filing for divorce because you've made it abundantly clear that you don't respect me, you don't value our marriage, and you are actively planning to leave me. You called me controlling in front of our friends. You told them you were biding your time and building an escape fund. You said I don't deserve loyalty. I was drunk. I was just showing off for Lorelai and that guy from accounting. And that's supposed to make it better? He shook his head slowly, a look of profound sadness finally breaking through the calm. Even if you were exaggerating, the underlying sentiment is real. That's how you truly see me. As someone you settled for. Someone you're trapped with. Where have you been staying? I asked, my mind scrambling, trying to find some solid ground in this nightmare. With my brother. I've been consulting with a lawyer. He picked up his bag again. I've already separated our finances. The joint account has enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for the next 3 months. That should give us time to decide what to do with the house. Separated our finances? You can't just do that. Panic was rising now, sharp and insistent. That's our money. Actually, I can. Particularly since I've been documenting your pattern of withdrawals to your secret account for the past 6 months. My blood went cold. The room stopped spinning and just stood still. What are you talking about? I whispered. The account at Sterling National, the one you've been transferring money to from our joint account. His eyes were flat, unreadable. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I'm the controlling one who watches our finances, remember? That's my money, I said weakly. From my paycheck. We'll let the court decide that. He moved toward the door. I'll be staying at my brother's for now. You can't just walk out. I was shouting now, the full reality of the situation finally hitting me like a physical blow. We need to talk about this. We can fix this. Now. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob, but he didn't turn around. That's the thing, Genna, he said, his voice heavy with a finality that broke my heart. We're past talking. You've been saying everything I needed to hear for months now. A devastating pause. I just wasn't listening. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, a sound of terrible, irreversible finality. The next few weeks were a blur of panic, denial, and desperate, clumsy attempts to regain control. I called Elias constantly. At first, my voicemails were angry, demanding he come home and stop being so ridiculous. Then they became tearful, pleading. Finally, they turned manipulative, promising I'd change, that I'd be the wife he always wanted. He responded only by text. Brief, businesslike messages about logistics. The realtor will call you on Tuesday. I've forwarded the electric bill to your email. Even my sister Clara, who I'd expected to take my side, seemed distant. What exactly did you say at this party, Genna? She asked carefully over the phone. When I repeated the words, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Jenna, she finally said, her voice laced with a disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could. How would you feel if Elias had said that about you? It's different, I insisted, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. He's been so controlling lately. No. By controlling, do you mean he questions your spending from the joint account? The account you're both supposed to be using to save for your future? My delusion finally, irrevocably shattered when I received an email from his lawyer. It was a request for a formal meeting to discuss asset division. Attached was a detailed accounting of our finances. It included documentation of every single withdrawal I'd made to my secret account, complete with dates, times, and amounts. Worse, there were transcripts. Transcripts of text messages between me and Lorelei, which he must have gotten from our shared phone records. Texts where I'd complained about him, called him controlling, boring. Texts where I'd explicitly said I'd settled for him. The meeting with the lawyers was excruciating. Elias sat across the polished mahogany table, calm, prepared, and composed. I felt like a cornered animal. His attorney laid out the terms, and they weren't even unfair. The house would be sold, proceeds split, retirement accounts divided, personal properties separated. But what stung, what felt like 1,000 tiny cuts, was the cool efficiency with which Elias had approached dismantling our life together. It wasn't emotional for him anymore. It was a business transaction. We request that Miss Mitchell provide an accounting of the funds transferred to her private account, as these were drawn from joint assets, his lawyer stated calmly. That money is from my paychecks, I countered weakly. His lawyer, without missing a beat, slid a spreadsheet across the table. Miss Mitchell's contributions to joint household expenses were minimal. Mr. Barrett covered approximately 78% of all household costs, allowing Miss Mitchell to save the majority of her personal income while benefiting from his financial support. The numbers were right there, in black and white. He had B.